Hey, what's up, cats and kittens? And shout out to all my cerebralites. It's me, the Cerebral Diva, and I'm back with a review of Braxton Family Values, Season 5, Episode 18, titled The Mother of All Insults. And this episode was a doozy. I mean, it was intense out the gate. From the word go, the intensity volume was at a 10. And as much as I hate to see family drama, I was so happy to see someone finally put Tamar in her place in a very real way. Shout out for Trina for stepping up to the plate, because I feel like for the last 5 seasons, we've watched people pacify Tamar, walk on eggshells, and just really not call her to the table for some of her behavior. Now, the irony in that statement is this episode takes place at the table. Trina is having, before I go into the episode, let me say this. I'm a longtime Braxton fan. I've been a fan of Tamar actually way before Braxton Family Values was ever even thought of. I have her first album. I have 2 copies of her first album. That's how much I love that album. That the Get None and what else? If You Don't Want to Love Me, Money Can't Buy Me Love or Buy You Love. There's a bunch of that first album. I'm telling you, you can listen to it from the first song to the very last song and never press a skip. That first album is probably, in my opinion, her best work. Even though, what's the song? Love and War. Even Love and War is probably her biggest song. It's definitely not the best material that she's ever put out. If you want to hear some really good music, listen to Tamar's very first album. And listen to the Braxton's first album as well, where Tamar sings lead on primarily all of the songs. I Miss Your Kiss, Who's the Boss. That whole album too is one that you can listen to from beginning to end. The harmonies are incredible. So I've been a long time fan. Now, being a fan and not being privy to personality types, while I still like Tamar's music, I'm just not such a fan of her as a person, as a human being. Like, there's just something so vindictive and just, I don't want to say evil, because I don't necessarily consider it. She's just really petty and really childish and just one of those people that, you want to, like, either you're gonna walk on shells around her for the sake of maintaining a friendship, or you're gonna call her to the table and then she's not gonna want to be your friend because she doesn't like people who call her on her BS. And that's exactly what Trina did. So in this latest episode, Trina is thinking of expanding her Bar Chicks brand to Swanee, Georgia. I have no idea where that is. And the only valid point that Tamar did make is that I just don't think Swanee, Georgia would be a good place to open up a Bar Chicks. You would probably want to do it in a place that's a little bit more cosmopolitan, where the people who watch the Braxton Family Values live and can actually patronize and help support and grow the business. Now, Tamar made a valid point about that not being a good business idea. I do agree with her there. Now, where the problem comes in is Trina is hosting a tasting at her home, where she's offering them samples of menu items that she's considering adding to the menu. Some pecan bourbon chicken and I don't know, several different. I believe there's some cauliflower of some sort, but Tamar has absolutely nothing to say nice about anything that was on the table. Everything she said was disparaging. Everything that she said was negative. There was not one supportive word that came out of her mouth at the table. Now, let me take that back. I do think she said the chicken was good, but it needed salt. But it's not necessarily the way, what she said, is the way she says things. Her delivery sometimes is just so stank, for lack of a better word. It's just stank. And it's amazing because she's very sensitive to the way that people speak to her, but the way she believes that she has carte blanche to speak to other people any way she chooses to, and to do so without any consequences, and to do so without being challenged. When you see the way she behaves on this show with her sisters, it's no wonder the people at the talk said, we can't deal with this anymore. She has to go. We don't care if it's about ratings. We don't care if it's about money. It's just a hostile work environment, because if a woman who's If a girl deals with her sisters this way, I can't even imagine how she would deal with her coworkers, especially considering that I believe that both she and Vince were executive producers on the talk. So she really feels like she's in a position of power, and she's a person who I could easily see abusing that power. But the great thing about this episode is that Trina was not having it from Tamar this particular episode. She went in and she did not come out. She talks about Tamar being an absentee parent and, just about Tamar not being a good person. And, she just really said some things that hopefully will be food for thought for Tamar, because she's really good at feeding other people nonsense, but she's not so good at taking criticism. She's one of those people who only wants yes people around her, and that's why you constantly see her falling out with friends. You see her falling out with Tiny. She fell out with Monica. She fell out with what's Lil Wayne's baby's Toya. When you see a person constantly falling out with people, you can see that Tamar is a common denominator. The other people are still friends with each other. They've managed to maintain a friendship. The only person who's having problems with other people is Tamar. It was the same thing with K. Michelle. She chimed in on K. Michelle's past relationship and did not have any clue as to what the nature of that relationship was. Now, I love Tamar as a singer, but as a person, I'm not a fan. And I think that she would probably be bigger than she is, but when you see her personality, I can't see a manager, a producer, a booking agent looking at her personality and saying, that's someone I want to work with. Even last year, or maybe 2 years ago, when we watched her preparing for the Love and War tour, you saw the way that she treated the background singers. She was just completely condescending to everyone. And for some reason, this is a really interesting part. She seems to really genuinely not understand that, for lack of a better term, she's a bitch. She's a bitch. And I know if I were friends with her, we wouldn't be friends, because I have a zero tolerance policy for that type of behavior. I would definitely have exploded. I mean, kudos to Trina for holding it together for that long. And that's what you saw. That's what you see in this episode. What you see is the tip, the peak, the pinnacle of Trina's frustration with Tamar. She just reached the boiling point where she just could not hold it in any longer. She was sick and tired of Tamar sort of skating by and people sort of just skimming over her misbehavior and not really calling her to the table. And in this particular episode, Trina decided to be the one to pull her card, and that's exactly what happened. So piggybacking off of Trina's frustration, we see Tracy begin to chime in and talk about some of the things that Tamar had said about her in reference to an album that she'd previously released, and Tamar said some negative things about, maybe she could win a Grammy in the category for doing a duet with auto-tune. What type of person says that about their sister? I'll tell you what type of person. An insecure person who is afraid that someone else is clipping at their heels. If Tamar is not okay unless she's number one. She has to be number one. She has an inferiority complex. In order for her to be okay, no one can be near her, close to her, and definitely not above her. The moment that you start to get close to her, it really makes her uncomfortable, and that's when her claws come out, because she's insecure. Now, I've heard her talk about being bullied, and insecurities are definitely a byproduct of being bullied, and maybe she really needs to work on the issues that she has that are internal, and stop projecting on everyone else and making herself seem like the victim, because anyone with two eyes can see she clearly is not the victim. She is the instigator of 99% of every single altercation that I've seen. She has instigated that, and 99% of the time she gets away with instigating it. But it's nice to see that people like Trina and Tracy are both reaching the point where they're just not having it from her anymore. Tamar is nearly 40 years old, It's time to grow up. You can't be a kid anymore. You're a parent. You have a child that you have to set an example for. And if this type of behavior is how you're going to raise a child, if this is the example that you're setting for your child, I can see some pretty dark days in her future. So the argument ends, or the exchange ends, with Tamar storming off in typical Tamar fashion. And of course, rather than just leave, she has to throw a few parting shots about her $15 million home and, her nanny and blah, 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 blah. Just childish and just petty wop. Like, she's just so petty to me. So after she leaves, we see Trina discussing expanding her Bar Chicks brand. Excuse me, guys. Give me just 1 second here. She's discussing the pros and cons of opening a new Bar Chicks with Evelyn. And I think it'd be a great idea, actually. Like, if I were going to expand a business and I had a platform like Braxton Family Values, I definitely wouldn't want to do it someplace rural. I would definitely think of places like California, New York, Chicago, Miami. Miami would probably be a great location. Because even though it's more expensive for a reason. You get what you pay for. And business rule 101 is location, location, location. So sometimes when you're trying to save money actually causes you to lose money. So I think that if she's going to open a second one, she needs to dive in with everything she has and not necessarily try to cut corners on a location that's going to have probably a low to mediocre return, if any. So after she talks with Evelyn, then we see all of the girls come together for a round 2 where they're about to try to not just rehash, but try to find a resolution in terms of what happened a few nights ago, or at least in our minds a few nights ago. Where I'm not sure how long ago it was based on the production, but they all come together for a meeting or lunch, and calamity ensues. Okay, you guys, so you might notice a little bit of a abrupt cut between the previous section and this section. So believe it or not, it's been about a day and a half since I started recording this video. So I'm going to try to remember where I left off. And I believe I left off at the lunch that the sisters were having. Now, in this particular lunch, everyone is venting their frustrations. In particular, both Tracy and Trina are sort of airing their grievances to Tamar. And they're both sort of letting her know how they feel. And then midway through this particular lunch, Tamar hijacks their moment by... and maybe hijack is a little bit of an insensitive term, and I'm definitely not trying to be insensitive. But I have to be honest that it came across a little bit insensitive to me. So, okay, let me tell you guys what I'm talking about. So they're having this exchange, and Trina's talking about the things that Tamar has done to her. Trina's talking about the things that Tracy is talking about the things that Tamar has done to her. And so halfway through it, Tamar says, well, part of the reason why I've been behaving the way that I behave is because I just had a miscarriage. Now, had we not seen season 1, 2, 3, 4, then she might have a little bit of leverage by saying that it was the miscarriage is to blame for her behavior. But we've seen this pathology, this consistent pattern of immature and sophomoric behavior from Tamar. So to blame it on a miscarriage, I think, was a little bit manipulative to me. I've never had a miscarriage, so I can't speak to what that particular experience is, what that's like. But I can say that just as, like, she was sort of vacillating between tears and sarcasm. And so for me, at some point, I was like, okay, I need you to pick one emotion, choose one emotion and stick to it. Because she would be almost on the verge of tear. It just seemed disingenuous by and large to me. And, and the reason I'm struggling to say this is because I feel a little bad saying that it felt disingenuous, being that it was a miscarriage, so I don't want to discount whatever experience that she had, but I'm just simply saying from a spectator's point of view, it did not feel authentic. It felt forced, it felt contrived, it felt like she was acting. At one point I wanted to applaud, even in previous scenes, the scene where the scene that sort of gave birth to this second portion, the scene at Trina's house when she's, sort of doing a show about the chicken and how the chicken needs more salt. When Trina was confronting her, she went very much into victim mode where she's, she got very Tamar, for lack of a better term. So in this particular scene, the scene at the restaurant when the sisters are finding out that Tamar had a miscarriage, for me, it came across disingenuous. Because I'm thinking to myself, well, if this really happened, and not that I don't believe that it happened, being that this happened, that's probably a better way to phrase it. You would think that she would want to disclose that not in front of television cameras. You would think that she would want to have that conversation in an environment where her sisters could give her some genuine support. But the fact that she was willing to sort of throw that grenade of a miscarriage out for sympathy, to me, just really did a disservice to whatever that experience was. So, I'm trying to think what else happened during the episode. But to me, Tamar is just, I don't know, I've never met her in person, so it's really, I hate to sort of make assessments of people's personalities without really, really knowing them. But watching her on this show just makes me thankful that I don't know her. She's just not the type of person that I could see myself being friends with. And, you see her fall out with everyone, with the exception of maybe her mother, and she's even tried her mother on a few occasions. She's tried her father. So there are certain people that she has a certain level of deference for, that she doesn't necessarily go to level 10, but she will turn up to about level 7.5, almost an 8 with pretty much anyone. And I just think that at some point she has to grow up and realize that the behavior that she's displaying is just, it's not what grown women do. And so anyhow, you guys, I feel like I've talked enough about this particular episode. Braxton Family Values, even with Tamar, is still probably one of my favorite reality TV shows. And I think part of the reason why I stick around is because I'm waiting for that day when Tamar finally has the epiphany and the lights come on and she realizes that all of the things that she's done to other people are probably the reason why she keeps experiencing these bumps in the road. Clearly the girl is talented. Clearly, in my opinion, some people would agree with me, I think she's really pretty. But I think that a lot of what hinders her career is just her personality. Is she learned to turn the volume down to a 2. Because if I were a producer, if I were a record executive, if I had the power to take her career to the next level, excuse me, and I watched this show and saw her personality and saw her temperament, it would be a definite no-go for me, because that's just not something, because it's very much like raising a child, trying to control an adult. And it's worse than raising a child, because at least the child can be disciplined to some degree. But when you're dealing with an adult, you really don't have much control over that person. That person has free reign over their actions, their deeds, and so on and so forth. So I don't know, but I do hope at some point she really gets it, because, I think she just turned 40. So, she's getting a little long in the tooth to not get it. So yeah, I'll just keep my fingers crossed. I'll be back next week with another Braxton Family Review. In the meantime, you guys, as always, in closing, remember to live better, love harder, and think smarter. This is me, the Cerebral Diva, signing off, and I will talk to you guys again soon.